What sticks with you when you listen to or read a story? What kinds of details ensure that the world the story creates is complete and imaginable? When we teach information literacy, we are often asking students to engage in a world that is a bit unfamiliar to them. One of the ways we often help mitigate this is by using narrative techniques in our in-person teaching. By using some basic narrative techniques in the creation of online video tutorials as well, we can not only engage students creatively, but also add significant layers of accessibility. In this short presentation, we will take a look at the theoretical cognitive background of narrative techniques and then explore a few concrete examples. This project grew out of a desire to not only create online video tutorials that meet the baseline of ADA accessibility requirements, as well as universal design for learning requirements, but go beyond them to think a little more creatively about accessibility. Narrative is a form of storytelling that makes use of causality and direct communication to engage the reader/listener in a story. Using narrative in education is a form of constructivist pedagogy. The key to narrative is a description of what happens during and as a result of an action rather than a static description of the thing itself. When we think about accessibility, we tend to think of things like closed captions or big enough images or describing exactly what's happening on the screen. And when we think about UDL, we think about multiple learning paths and engaging students where they are. But when we add in narrative to our toolbox of accessibility features, we can bring additional cognitive constructs into play. We can create an even better trail of breadcrumbs to allow for students to recreate the concept later for themselves. This is a function of memory, specifically narrative cognition. In An Architecture of Narrative Memory, Carlos Leon writes that, quote, producing narratives is not only an ability that is more or less natural, but a specific topology for storing information. And goes on, quote, narrative objects are then created. Full narratives are then created from these narrative objects as constituents. Finally, narratives are the main elements of the narrative-aware episodic memory and procedural semantic memory, end quote. Narrative promotes accessibility by directly engaging cognitive memory building. So let's talk about some concrete ways to use narrative techniques in online video creation. The first step is to be explicit about how one interacts with resources. So, instead of begin by searching for stars in the library catalog, try, using the search button on the library homepage, let's type in stars and press enter or select the search button to begin our search for resources. Even though the first is a bit narrative-like, notice that causality is missing, and there is nothing explicit about how to actually perform the search. In the second, the sentence invites the user, together with the librarian, to search for stars using explicit instructions with causality built in. There are lots of other ways in which narrative techniques can be employed. Here is a short video clip using narrative over multiple sentences. In it, I am explaining how and why using Google Scholar from the library homepage enables far more direct access to resources, and in doing so, bypasses paywalls. Their narrative hook, as it were, occurs after a few sentences of description. Using causality and narrative in this way creates the opportunity for strong cognitive memoric connections. There are 4 important features to note about Google Scholar. The first is the Find It at PSU link. You will only see this link if you access Google Scholar from the library homepage, and selecting this link will bring you back to the library catalog to see if we have access to the article. Use this link or the direct PDF or HTML link instead of clicking on the title of the article to avoid running into a paywall. Okay, let's back up a little bit. If narrative in its basic form means telling a story, then what can that practically mean for creating short video tutorials? To begin with, always create a script and storyboard for videos. This allows you to write out causality and also to create threads that might run throughout. Being deliberate about this can be really helpful. For example, when we save an item record to My Favorites, we create the possibility of resource management by remembering our resource for future use. It also means making explicit causal connections between concepts and doing so in such a way that enables as much accessibility as possible. So when discussing why an action occurs, try not to describe it in terms of visual space. Selecting My Favorites brings us to our list of resources, instead of selecting the pin icon at the top of the page. I've used a number of short narrative techniques in this short video clip in order to enhance accessibility. This is the end of a short video on using the Primo tool My Favorites to manage resources. My Favorites is an amazing tool for managing your research. It's completely private. You can save any resource record while you're signed in, and only you will be able to access them. Use the label system to organize resources and return to them later. Returning to resources for further exploration is vital to comprehensive research, and My Favorites provides an efficient way to do so. To conclude, reproducibility plays a key role in broad accessibility. Narrative techniques engage the cognitive functions that create reproducibility. Tell a story, construct the narrative, and you might be surprised at just how accessibility becomes a natural part of your video creation process. Thank you.